Davidzo.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, just one moment.
Yeah, it's coming up.
All right, okay.
It's good now.
All right, okay, thank you so much. And thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share on a very important topic. A topic that's not just important to me, but I think it's very important for the future of mining. My name is Davidzo Muchawaya. I'm the regional lead at the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. I'm going to just talk briefly about IRMA and how it was established. IRMA was established back in 2006, and at the time, there were questions from concerned companies, organizations, as well as individuals about what responsible mining looked like. The challenges they were grappling with at the time are the same challenges, more or less, that we're grappling with within the mining sector today. And in that question of asking what responsible mining looked like, it led to the establishment of IRMA. Specifically, IRMA is a voluntary assessment system for industrial scale mines. There's a standard, mines. I will speak about that later, and a third-party assurance system. So this is a system that is used to audit mining companies that volunteer to be part of the IRMA membership against the IRMA standard, as well as the secretariat that oversees both the development of the standard or revision of the standard and overseeing the third-party system, which is, the auditing that happens. But maybe just coming back to give context about the topic that we're speaking about today, which is ASM mining. I think we need to acknowledge that our lives intersect with ASM mining on a daily basis. You can think of the car that you drive, the entertainment gadgets that you use at home, and the phones that we can't put down, the gadgets that we're even using today to deliver this presentation contain mine material, and the significant part of it comes from ASM mining. And that's how our lives are intertwined with ASM mining. That's how important it is. However, at the point where we are today, there's growing pressure from consumers like ourselves, asking
une croissance auprès des consommateurs que nous sommes,
buyers or those that sell to the end consumers, to tell us where they
qui achètent ou ceux qui vendent aux derniers consommateurs. Ils ne savent pas d'où viennent les mines, les minerais qu'ils utilisent. Et ceci a amené à plusieurs changements et à plusieurs initiatives.
Within the mining space. And having said that, I thought I would just, introduce you a little bit to the IRMA standard briefly, but to use that as a basis for the discussion that we have today. What I want to be discussing is the role of responsible mining standards in promoting responsible mining practices in Africa. This is against the background that in most jurisdictions in Africa, the laws for ASM mining are inadequate. In some cases, they're inconsistently applied, or in other cases, they are not even existent at all. And these are the challenges, regulatory challenges that the ASM sector faces. But I also need to state the fact that responsible mining standards will never be able to replace the regulatory framework. The regulatory framework is important, and there's a role that governments will play and will continue to play in terms of regulating the ASM sector. However, given the challenges that I've just stated, there's a role that responsible mining standards like IRMA can play in advancing responsible mining practices. For example, this is how the IRMA standard looks like. It's based on 4 main pillars, and there are other ASM standards that are out there, some which should be spoken about by the speakers that are to come. So I'm not going to go into the details of, what is contained in the IRMA standard at this point, but just to give a snapshot. So usually responsible mining standard would include requirements for business integrity, usually referring to legal compliance, ASM grievance mechanisms, anti-corruption systems that, they should have in place. Labor rights is also one critical component of ASM or, responsible mining standards. This is against the background that the ASM sector employs quite a lot of labor, and in some cases, the labor rights of those workers who work at those mine sites are not respected. Worker health and safety, very critical. Quite a lot happens at mine sites. Injuries, accidents, shafts collapsing. Those are some of the risks that are associated with ASM mining in some cases. And you often sometimes, find children at those mine sites. And WiM-Africa is doing quite a lot of work within that space to ensure that children do not end up at mine sites. So that's also very important. And community health and safety, given the nature of ASM mining, is also a requirement that when we are talking about promoting responsible sourcing, responsible mining practices is very important. Environmental responsibility, ASM mining uses quite a lot of mercury, some use cyanide. There's potential for contamination of water resources, biodiversity and ecosystems may get affected when mining is happening. So it is very important for the ASM sector to ensure that they're complying or they're implementing environmental management systems and practices. And lastly, I want to talk about the legacy of ASM mining. I think it is important when we are talking about promoting responsible mining practices to ask the question, what happens after mining? This is important because sometimes communities or workers are left in situations that are worse off or more vulnerable than where they were before mining started. So it is important to plan for legacy, to plan for what happens, how are the shafts going to be rehabilitated. Those are very critical questions that need to be asked even at the planning stage. So in a nutshell, these are some of the questions or those are areas that when we start talking about advancing responsible mining in Africa. And in addition to that, this also intersects with the work that WiM-Africa is doing and other organizations and initiatives, building support for capacity development, very important because sometimes the capacity is not even there. Providing tools such as self-assessment questionnaires that ASM can use, and also providing platforms for the ASM to be able to promote transparency, because that's one of the questions that stakeholders ask. There's more need for disclosures, there's more need for transparency within the mining sector. And one other important issue that we also need to discuss is the relationship between large-scale mines and ASM mines. Often you find this relationship is marked by or characterized by conflict, because ASM mining happens within the margins of LSM concessions or even within the large-scale mining concessions. However, would get better outcomes if there's collaboration between ASM and LSM. And at IRMA, we have a framework that where we require large-scale mines to ensure that they promote positive relationships with small-scale mines or artisanal mining, because we realize that we'll get better outcomes if large-scale mines collaborate with small-scale mines or artisanal mines. And having said that, I would like to touch on some of the benefits that we'll get if we continue to advance responsible mining practices in Africa. Firstly, as the protection of lives, the communities, workers, as well as the environment. And secondly, it's the potential to unlock responsible buyers, which is an issue within the ASM sector, as well as investors, because once, the ASM get responsible buyers, there's also potential for them to improve their practices. And lastly, I would like to talk about reputation. There's a potential for the ASM sector to get, enhanced reputation when responsible mining practices are implemented. And this is not just reputation on a site level, but reputation on a sector level. there's quite a lot of trust deficit between the stakeholders in the mining sector. And as we advance responsible mining practices in Africa, there's potential to start building that reputation in Africa, for example, that will enable the mining sector to be seen as a responsible employer or as a responsible corporate citizen. And as I come to close, I would like to leave you with this thought that I had in mind from the time that I started, working on this topic, is that advancing responsible mining in Africa is not just about mining, but it is more about people. It is more about protecting the lives of people, the lives of workers who work at the mines, the lives of people who sit and stay around the communities where mining is happening. And with that, I would like to give back the mic to Dr. Comfort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Davidzo. Quickly, before Dr. Adiola makes a summary of your speech, thanks very much. It's highly appreciated. I would like to introduce and give recognition to Distinguished Senator Uche Ekwinife. Distinguished Senator Uche Ekwinife is doing a lot in Africa, and most especially